So, after 8 seasons, we finally come to the end of Game of Thrones. And did it end on a bang or did it end on a whimper? It's hard to say really because I think the season 8 of Game of Thrones has become so polarizing that they obviously didn't do it perfectly. And a lot of people are really, really angry about this. I can't say I'm particularly angry, I'm just disappointed. But I don't remember the names of the writers of Game of Thrones, but I think most people tend to refer to them as D&D. So D&D, I know, were offered a full season, 10 episodes, for season 8, and they refused. They said, no, we're going to do it in 6. And I don't know why they refused. I don't know if it's been revealed why they refused. I haven't read anything about that, but it was clear that they needed a full season because, well, we had to wait 2 years for season 8, and I don't get why, because the entirety of season 8 feels so rushed, especially when it gets to the Battle of Winterfell in episode 3, up until the finale. You can clearly tell that it's just so rushed. They're trying to wrap up as much as they can, and I just don't know why they needed 2 years to do 6 episodes. Especially when it feels so rushed. I just don't get it. I did read somewhere that the Battle of Winterfell took like 50 days, something like that, to film, but the Battle of Winterfell itself was. There were some bits of it that were impressive, but I mean, the common complaint about the battle is that you couldn't see anything, and yeah, that's true. You can't see a thing. If you look online, there's a lot of Total War fans who are also Game of Thrones fans, and they hate how the Battle of Winterfell played out. And I don't blame them, to be honest, though, because sending what we thought was basically the entirety of the Dothraki to die, just have a big frontal cavalry charge into the complete pitch black. You have no idea what they're about to hit. And when you see, again, what we thought was the entirety of the Horde wiped out, excuse me, and then you have trebuchets in front of your infantry instead of behind or behind the castle walls, and they only fire like a few shots each. I can go on and on about how bad the battle for Winterfell was, but needless to say, it could have been done better. I mean, there were some good aspects about it, though. There were some bits of it I enjoyed, but the threat of the White Walkers, the White Walkers, sorry. The threat of the White Walkers and the Night King that's been built up since season 1. In fact, just the first scene of episode 1 of season 1. It just fell apart completely. Think about how season 7 ended. Season 7 ended with the wall falling down and the White Walkers marching through. And we're left thinking, oh my goodness, what is going to happen? And this big menace, this big ultra powerful dark force that's been built up for the previous 7 seasons, they get defeated in the first big battle. It was like, wow, they just fail. And I'm left thinking, this is a bit of a letdown. Just a little bit of a letdown. I didn't necessarily mind Cersei being the last big baddie, but she wasn't even really much of a threat in season 8. Because when you get to, let me just say, with regards to Arya killing the Night King, I don't really care about that, to be honest. I know a lot of people didn't like that. I had no strong feelings about that at all. But the Night King as a character, and just the whole White Walker story arc, it was wasted. They really dropped the ball hard on that one. But with regards to Cersei Lannister and the second to last episode of season 8, we were teased about how great this the Siege of King's Landing will be. We've had good battle scenes in Game of Thrones before, And considering this is the second to last episode, we should be thinking, oh wow, I mean, this should be fantastic. I mean, they've been teasing the Golden Company since season 7. And we're led to believe that they were this powerful, strong army that could really tip the scales against our heroes. And the Golden Company just gets wiped out pretty much immediately. They were just poof, gone. And I guess it's subverting our expectations, but I think there's a good way of doing it and a horrible way of doing it, and I think in this season they did it horribly. And of course, what everyone is annoyed about is the fact that Daenerys, this character who we've followed since season 1, just goes complete megalomaniac. Just becomes genocidal. And they just did not set it up properly. They didn't set it up properly at all. It's such a shame. Before the last episode aired, I actually went back and looked at some old scenes of Daenerys and Jorah Mormont from seasons 1, 2, 3, 4, the early days basically. And I sort of reminded myself about just how well they did her character, because you could see that the seeds were planted for something good, for something great even. And in season 7, her character kind of suffered a bit, but they still kind of had her on track. In season 8, they just dropped the ball completely, especially in episode 5 of season 8, because this about turn that she does, where she just barbecues hundreds of thousands of women and children, it just came out of nowhere. Alright, yeah, fine. You know, she lost one of her dragons and her best friend got beheaded. That's terrible. Doesn't mean you start barbecuing hundreds of thousands of women and children. And if you look back at some of the early scenes of Game of Thrones, where she constantly says, I will not be Queen of the Ashes. I am not my father. I am nothing like the Mad King. And she's exactly like the Mad King. She was the Mad Queen. It's just crazy. And like I said, I know I'm getting a bit agitated about it now, but honestly, I'm not angry about how Game of Thrones ended. I'm just really disappointed, because Game of Thrones was one of my favourite TV shows of all time, and it still is. It still is, really. But they just dropped the ball completely. They had a... If I had to describe season 8, or at least the finale itself, I would describe it as one massively missed opportunity, because the last episode was just so underwhelming. I'm not kidding. For me, it was so underwhelming. By the time we got to the second half of the episode, I kind of forgot that they even killed off Daenerys in the first part. And that's the thing. You have her do something so shocking in the previous episode, and then about 30 minutes in, they just kill her off. And of course, yes, they've only got one episode left, but if you're going to have Daenerys do what she did, you should have have it done earlier. And this goes back to my point of why they needed a full season. They needed time to build up this madness. And some fans would point out, well, the seeds were always planted about Daenerys' madness, like all the terrible things that she did in the early seasons, where she crucified the masters and she killed the slavers. And yes, that's true. That's true. But the people that she killed were evil people. There was no setup whatsoever for her to murder innocent women and children. Her whole arc is about saving innocent people, is about protecting innocent people, breaking the wheel, which is crushing innocent people every time it turns. And she just forgets it. It's just poof. The moment the bell rings in the second to last episode, she decides, nope, I'm just going to destroy King's Landing and practically everyone in it. And so, it's hard to say if Game of Thrones really ends with a whimper or not. I honestly couldn't really say. Would I recommend that anyone who has never seen Game of Thrones start watching the show? Well, that's an interesting question, because take Lost, for example. I stuck with Lost, like many people, I stuck with Lost from beginning to end. And Lost completely dropped the ball in its last episode. And anyone who has never seen Lost, I would not recommend that they start watching it, because Lost felt like, I know there were some hardcore Lost fans out there, but for me, Lost felt like just a giant waste of time. But if I met someone who had never seen Game of Thrones and they were interested in start watching the series, I would still recommend that they watch it. Because I think overall, Game of Thrones has more good moments than bad moments. Yes, it ended pretty poorly, but I still think that this is a quality show. And a lot of people are angry about who became king, Bran. Put it this way, I've never been a fan of Bran. He was just a boring character for me. I did not care what was going on with him whatsoever. And so if you make him the king, it just feels, I don't know, like this. If I had to visualize it, imagine this big balloon of excitement that's been slowly growing throughout all the seasons, and then when you get to the end, it just deflates, and it just deflates. It doesn't pop; it just deflates. It's like eight seasons of build up, and it feels like just a flop, essentially. And so, could they have done things better? Absolutely, yeah, they could have done things better. For me personally, this is a real personal nitpick for me, is that Bronn was really underused in season 8. Think of it this way: Bronn, who's someone who's been there since season 1. He's gone through so many adventures with Tyrion, with Jaime, with everyone else. Well, most of the characters. And when it came to season 8, his arc just became, well, it just became so irrelevant. And Bronn, I feel like with Bronn, they just gave him nothing to do. I mean, at one point, Cersei gives him a crossbow and say, right, kill Jaime and Tyrion, or Jaime or Tyrion, pick one and kill the other, something like that. Bronn obviously doesn't. He decides to just not do it. And then the next time we see him is for about 3 minutes on one of the last scenes of episode 6. And he's made a massive coin. It's like, Dean, the whole last episode, we see Bronn for about 3 minutes. And I don't know. What it feels like, it feels like, because the writers were just trying to rush to finish off Game of Thrones so they can start writing Star Wars, their new Star Wars trilogy. That's really what it feels like. And the fact that HBO did offer them a full season and they turned it down, that would be a controversy I think they will never live down, to be honest. But it's weird to say what I recommend. Well, I'm not going to say what I recommend season 8 of Game of Thrones. I mean, if you stuck with Game of Thrones for all these seasons, you're obviously going to watch season 8, regardless if it's good or bad. But would I recommend Game of Thrones as a TV show to someone who's never seen Game of Thrones? Yes, I would. Even if it has a disappointing ending, I would still recommend it. Put it this way, how many TV shows these days actually have a satisfying ending? A lot of them do drop the ball. So, with regards to Game of Thrones, yeah, I still regard it as one of the greatest TV shows of all time. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have to say. So thank you very much for watching. Please click the like button, leave a comment, subscribe. I would certainly appreciate that. And as always, I will see you next time.